It is May the 4th, and that means that it's Star Wars Day. And that means that The Bad Batch has premiered on Disney+, the first episode in a rumored 16-episode series that will pick up after the events of the Clone Wars Season 7. In many ways, you could even view this as being, in a way, even though it really isn't, you could almost view it as being Clone Wars Season 8. It has a very similar intro bumper with the voiceover guy, and it does follow the story of the clones, but not the clones like Rex and those characters that we all saw back in the Clone Wars show, but it follows the story of the Bad Batch, which is a batch of 5 clones that are very different from the regular clone troopers in that because these clones were genetically enhanced, it was sort of described as kind of being a malfunction, but a good one. Each one has a specific kind of ability that makes them, in a way, superhuman. So, like, one has very good eyesight, one is very intelligent, one's very smart, one's like a hunter, and his name is Hunter, like a Wolverine type of guy. And, because of that, their inhibitor chips don't work and don't function the same way as the other clones do. And because of that, they are caught up in this whirlwind of time when the galaxy is changing over thanks to the event of Order 66, which was pretty much covered here in this first episode, which was about an hour and 11 minutes long. It was not short at all. It was almost like a full-length movie in a way, or at least a full-length animated movie called Aftermath. And it pretty much tells the story of the Bad Batch being caught up, as I said, in Order 66. It actually begins before Order 66, where we find out that Obi-Wan Kenobi has found General Grievous. And of course, the report's kind of delayed because by this point, Grievous has already been taken care of because just a few minutes later, Emperor Palpatine, or at that point, soon to be the Emperor Palpatine, initiates Order 66, and the clones begin to betray the Jedi. But because the Bad Batch is not programmed the same way, they didn't betray the Jedi. In fact, they're kind of left in a state of confusion because they don't understand what happened. It doesn't make sense that they were, under the Jedi. They were working alongside the Jedi against the Separatist droids, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just turn on the Jedi. It doesn't make any sense, and it makes sense. If you're caught up in the Clone Wars, it makes no sense as far as what's going on. So the whole episode is pretty much done to establish, like, even though it seems like another season of Clone Wars, it is its own thing because it's meant to establish this show. It's meant to establish these characters because on the surface, going into this, I wasn't really too excited about it because I didn't understand how a story about a bunch of clones could be interesting. And obviously it's a spin-off based on the Bad Batch 4-parter from Season 7 of Clone Wars. So I'm over here thinking, whatever, like, who could care about a bunch of clones? But the whole point of this episode was to make us care about the clones, and it did a pretty good job of doing that in this episode, because these aren't just regular clones. They're much more human than just a generic clone of Jango Fett. These guys all have their own personality, they all have their own skills, and they're caught up in this war that they weren't even anticipating. The episode actually covers the transition between the Clone Wars and the Civil War, the Galactic Civil War, which is actually stated by Saw Gerrera, who appears in this episode. But basically, the general premise of the story is that the clones, well, specifically Hunter, he allows a Jedi Padawan to escape and not get killed, but he reports it as being a death. And that's, of course, not true. And one of his own from within is, is possibly a mole here. And actually, I don't want to cover too many spoilers in this review. I think we're going to start doing more spoilerific reviews for the future, but I know some of you guys have not seen this yet, and you're probably wondering, should I watch it? And the answer is, if you're a fan of the Clone Wars show, or Rebels, or any of the Dave Filoni stuff, yeah, you definitely should, because it's right up your alley. I mean, it's an interesting episode, because it covers things that we had heard about, but never really got to understand. Like, for example, or at least visually see. For example, it talks about when the Emperor became the Emperor and how people reacted to it and how the clones that were under his control just kind of went along with it. Whereas the Bad Batch don't really understand, Galactic Republic, Empire, what's the difference, And there is a difference, and they soon realize the difference. They go back to Kamino, which I was really happy to see again, and, at one point Tarkin shows up, and he wants to renegotiate, well, not so much renegotiate, but shut down negotiations with the Kaminoans because he wants to initiate a recruitment type of military as opposed to clones. Now, we knew about this. As Star Wars fans, you know that at some point between episodes 3 and 4, the Emperor decides to not use clones anymore, probably because the inhibitor chips began to malfunction. And because of that, it could have been because of the Bad Batch for all we know. And because of that, that's why we have humans as stormtroopers in episode 4, 5, and 6. That's why. So, Tarkin shows up on Kamino and wants to test out the Bad Batch, who's still in a very weird state of limbo as far as what's going on. And they meet this young girl who actually turns out to be closely related to them without realizing it, who keeps trying to get close to them, who ends up becoming their pal along in their mission, but not right away. So, Tarkin tests them out to see how efficient they are, because supposedly the Bad Batch are just as powerful as an entire army. And they go in and they show off what they can do, and it's great. It's really, really great. And this episode wasn't really focused on one or two specific characters, even though Hunter did get most of the shine in this episode, but more so who was it that betrayed them from within and what's going on. So they get sent on this mission by Tarkin to go meet up and to go stop an insurgence of separatists. And they're thinking they're going to go fight off battle droids. But no, it's Saw Gerrera and his militia, and there's children everywhere. And because these clones are more human, they don't want to just kill innocent children. That's not what they're here to do. They actually have a conscience, believe it or not. And they don't want to do it. Even though they're from the seed of Jango Fett, they still have conscience. And that's when Saw Gerrera says you can either be with the past or be with the future, and then, join up. And they don't really join up with Saw Gerrera, but they go on their own path, so to speak, to not go along with rank and file, because even they suspect that Tarkin does not like clones, and that Tarkin does not want to keep clones around, which is going to be something that does come true, as we know from watching the original trilogy, that there's no clones there. And some people still think there are clones. There's some fans out there who think that stormtroopers were all clone troopers, ones that never read the extra material and don't know what really happened. But now we're going to get a much closer look as far as what really happened, because now the series has been put into place with basically the Bad Batch being on the run, trying to figure out what their place is in the galaxy as the Emperor's stranglehold over the galaxy continues. So that's pretty much the plot of this episode, or of this show. I enjoyed it. I liked it way more than I thought I was going to, and I'm really interested to see where these characters go and what ends up happening to them by the end. It's supposed to be 16 episodes, which means we're going to be doing this. Well, I'm going to be watching this show until August, right? July, August. So I'll be sure to have my reviews up. I don't know if it'll be right after they air at night, but I'll have them up shortly after the episode airs, within 24 hours most likely, unless something happens. So overall, though, check it out. It's about an hour and 11 minutes long, like I said, and not including credits, or including credits, and so about an hour and 6 minutes. And it was a good pilot. I don't even want to call it a pilot, because it's not really a pilot. It's a good first episode of The Bad Batch, Star Wars. And we'll talk more about it later on this week. I think episode 2 premieres on Friday, I think. So we'll be covering that then. I'll see y'all then.